Hello, and welcome to the Things I Want My Daughters to Know podcast, the podcast redefining women's health, one unfiltered conversation at a time. I'm your host, Jacqueline Rose, and every week I'll sit down with leading women's health experts and real women to share their lived experiences, bust health myths, challenge outdated and uninformed narratives, and explore what's really possible for women. We'll talk about periods, fertility, menopause, hormones, aging, and everything in between. This podcast is for every woman who ever felt confused, dismissed, or left out of the conversation about her own health. It is a space to celebrate women, break the silence, and open up conversations between mothers, daughters, sisters, and friends. Please hit the follow or subscribe button so you don't miss an episode, and share this podcast with your daughters, family, and friends. Let's get on with the episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Things I Want My Daughters to Know podcast. And today I am super excited with our guest because we're going to be talking about one of the topics that I love, the topic that I am most passionate about, and that is midlife women and navigating this stage of life. So welcome, Remi. I'm very happy to have you here. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do. But before you get started, there is just a small disclaimer at the beginning of this episode that there may be some swearing, there may be some foul language. As midlife women, we like to call it out as it is. So if you are used to listening to this podcast with your daughters or with younger kids around, you may want to maybe listen first with your headphones and then play it out loud. Not sure if there will be anything, but just a disclaimer that for this particular episode, maybe you want to listen first and then invite anyone else to listen to the episode with pleasure. But we always want to have honest, open, real conversations. So we're not looking to edit or cut anything out. So that's just a mini disclaimer for today. Remi, welcome. Tell us who you are, what you do, and we'll get started.
Well, let's just start with the fact that you had to put a disclaimer because I tried to keep it very real and authentic. So we'll start with that. But life is interesting at this stage of life, isn't it? And
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
so what my specialty is, I actually do work with women in midlife. I focus on reinventing. So women typically come to me with I want to change my career, or all of these transitions have happened. The kids have grown, they've left home, my parents are sick. I don't know what I want in my life, and nobody's even ever asked me what do I want in my life, so I don't even know where to go with it. And so that's kind of what I help women do, is uncover who they are today, figure out who they want to be, and then help us fill in the steps in between. We find so often that women, we live our lives for everyone else and we forget to live life for ourselves.
Yeah.
But there comes a point when people don't depend on us so much anymore, and that we get to choose then who we are.
Yeah.
So that's my specialty. But a little bit on my background, I live in America, and in a state called New Mexico, not to be confused with Mexico. New Mexico
Yep.
in the United States. It's nice and cool here today, and we live near the mountains. And I have been here probably, let's see, we moved here in June, so it hasn't been very long. We moved here
Oh,
from
wow.
South
You're
Texas.
a new transport.
Yes, so that's another one of the many fun things that happens in midlife, right? We move
Yeah.
around, our life changes, we have to make new friends, or all of these things are constantly changing for us. So I started my career, well, this is I have a very funny path. I let life lead me, as many of us do.
Yeah.
But my undergrad is in criminal justice. I never used it. I thought I would be an investigator of some sort. Life had different things in mind for me, and I ended up in the hotel industry.
Oh, wow.
Yep. And that kind of went from there in sales, and then marketing and catering. And then I jumped into the event world and was planning corporate events of up to 10,000 people. And then during the pandemic, a lot of us had to make some choices. The
Yeah.
event industry tanked. It was bad. There was no business coming in, and we had to adjust in some ways. And I ended up being more of a I'll say a coordinator, I guess, trying to help do virtual events. Um, didn't love that so much. So, but it gave me an opportunity to be able to say, okay, what do I love? Who do I want to be? What am I
Yeah.
good at? What's my purpose? What's my passion? And my answer really came out to be I want to help people be the best version of themselves, whatever that looks like. So,
Yeah.
how do I do that? Um, and I didn't really want to go back to get my master's degree in psychology. I already had a master's degree in organizational management. And so I thought, well, I don't know. But I had a friend that was a psychologist, and she's like, what about coaching? I'm like, well, what is this coaching thing? I mean, I know Oprah
Yeah.
Winfrey has a coach, but what's a coach, right? It's something for the rich and famous. So I did my investigating and then decided, okay, I can make this available to real people.
Yeah.
And that's kind of become my purpose and my goal now is to help women become the best version of themselves, to understand that they are worthy of a life they desire. And
Yeah.
that's my mission. And that's the conversations that I love to have. And
Yeah.
so here we are. But yeah, so now I'm a coach. I wrote a book that came out last March. I have to say now it's a new year, right? I can't say earlier this year. I have to say
Yes,
last year.
yes, yes. Last year.
Um, so that happened, and I do some speaking, I do some workshops, and this is my
Amazing.
story.
Amazing. So, if I wasn't in the menopause space, if I wasn't, speaking your language and really knowing that this menopause is much more than symptoms, it's a real profound life transition, everything that you've said would in the past have been termed a midlife crisis. Remi went
Sure.
on a midlife crisis. She moved states. She's changed careers. Typical midlife crisis for a midlife woman. I feel that I want to really banish that word midlife crisis because
Yeah.
I think that it was used to represent something that I think we now understand very, very differently.
Hmm.
With this menopause perspective, with this understanding of what this midlife transition is all about. So maybe let me ask you, how does that sort of resonate with you, that sort of that phrase midlife crisis with what you do? Because that feeling of women coming and saying, I don't know who I am, I don't know what I want to do, I want to do things differently, you know, let's say they're empty nesters and now, as you said, their roles have changed. Even if I think our kids are never leaving. I feel that our kids are always coming back and they're always around. So but even if our kids are growing up, and maybe if you don't have kids, but things are changing for sure. And how you're engaging with that change, again, for some women it used to be like that crisis, but you're obviously giving another language to it and another reframe to it. So just talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so to touch on that topic, so often when we think of the midlife crisis, we think about men and how they behave, and generalizing here, but a lot of men, when they come to that point, they're chasing their youth, right? So maybe they're getting a younger woman, maybe they're getting a fancy sports car, whatever it is, it's trying to hold on to the
Right.
youth.
Right.
It's a totally different story for women because it's not really trying to
Interesting.
hold on to our youth, it's trying to figure out who we are. And
Yeah,
that's a huge
really
difference.
interesting. Really
Yeah,
interesting reframe.
right? Yeah. And so you think about, I mean, almost every woman that I know has gone through this. There's very few women that held on to what they knew as a child. So I have this theory that when we come into this world, we kind of know our purpose. We're attached to this idea, when you, as a little kid, you come up with this idea what you want to be when you grow up. You know what you love to do when you are curious and you try things,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden the world becomes very noisy, and we have all of these expectations forced upon us. First it's from our parents, then it's from society, and then it's from our jobs, and then it's from our kids, and then it's from our spouse, and it goes on and on and on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when the noise starts to quiet down and the expectations lessen or change, what are we left with?
Yeah.
We don't know, right? That's the
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
So
And
one of
also
my,
because for many years, as you said, you've been wearing all these hats, and these hats they define you, they become who you are for good reason. There's nothing bad with that. We're not saying that's a bad situation. That is just
no,
the reality of life.
it's
You
true.
know,
Yeah.
you're a mom, you're a best friend, you're a spouse, you're a partner, you're an employee, all these features, elements that define you. And you think that is who you are
Yep.
because that is just how sort of our modern lives have developed. Um,
Absolutely.
but yeah, there comes a time of reckoning when, and if you're totally unprepared for it, then it's a real shock to the system.
It's a real shock because especially if you had kids, your purpose is all into those children, right? To raising those children, turning them into good humans, setting them out into the world. When that's not your primary focus anymore, I'm not saying they're not your focus, but they're not your primary anymore. They're out
Yeah.
taking care of themselves for the most part. Now
Yeah.
what? One of my favorite things to do with clients, and this is usually something we do early on, is an exercise about who you are. And so if I say to you, I want you to write just a little paragraph about who you are and don't use any labels. Don't say mom, don't say sister, don't say wife, none of the labels. Now tell me who you are. Most people can't do it
No.
without a lot of work. And so that's what I start. Let's look at your values. Let's look at your personality characteristics and what you're strong at and what do you love? What do you hate? What's important to you? These are the elements of who you are, not the labels.
Yeah. And I also think what women don't realize, and I speak about this a lot, and it sounds like this is sort of what you're getting at, is that um, as I said, we perceive menopause today because of the very loud menopause conversation that is out there. We perceive menopause, which is, a stage in midlife, um,
Yeah,
as a physical symptomatic experience. You're going to have all these different symptoms: hot flashes, night sweats, insomnia, achy joints, fluctuating periods. It's all, symptom based without
mm-hmm.
really understanding what the deeper meaning is behind this stage of life. What is the purpose of menopause?
Right, right,
And
right.
for me, the definition that I use, there's the biological definition, there's a hormonal definition. The definition that I use, and I think this is really tapping into what you're saying, is menopause is the necessary journey that every woman has to take to become her true, authentic self.
I love that. Yes. So yes, and here this is just a fascinating thing, and we talked about this just briefly before we came on, but the idea that there's only 6 species, right, that go through menopause and survive it.
Yeah.
Humans are one of them. So to me, when I learned that, I was like, holy shit, this has purpose, right? There's a reason that we go through
Yeah.
menopause. There's a reason that we survive it
Yes.
because our role changes.
Yeah.
So, yes, it's time to become an authentic person, right? But more importantly, it's time to become the wise woman, the sage, the crone, whatever you want to call it. I prefer wise woman, but
Yeah. Or as they're sometimes called, the batshit crazy women.
well, because we stopped giving a fuck, right? Here's the cuss words; they're coming out.
Yeah.
Well, and that's it. And I don't know
Yeah.
how many people have seen this, but the Do Not Care Club. Have you
Yes.
seen this on
Yes.
Facebook? Okay,
Yeah.
Melanie,
Yeah.
whatever her
It's
name is.
exploded. The last 9 months, she's gone from nothing to like the most popular real menopause influencer on social media.
Right?
Yeah.
Can you
But
imagine though? I've seen some episodes of her talks where she's like, I don't even know what happened. Oh my God.
I know. I think she's as shocked as anyone
That's
is.
what I'm saying.
But that is a midlife transformation. I don't think she intended on what was going on, but she was authentic and she was real and she was just speaking her truth, and that resonated. And I
Oh
think
yeah.
that says something. That sort of, forget about the social media hype around her. I just think her story is
Yeah.
partly what menopause is about.
Well, that's it. I mean, her story from the beginning was, okay, I'm not caring about stuff, and some of the things that I do care about, I can't care about. So who else is with me? And then all of a sudden, but everybody's piping in that's going through this time. And I think it's amazing because if we start thinking about and talking about our parents, our mothers, they never talked about it. The only thing we knew going into this was hot flashes, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all I knew. I
Yeah.
mean, but here, my perimenopause was horrid for me. Horrid. The
Yeah.
periods were devastating. I could barely leave the house during the cycle.
Yeah.
Um, and now the aches and pains and the weight gain and blah, 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 right? So you have all these things. And then, but okay, so we didn't talk about it before. And now our generation is opening the conversation. And I think it's amazing
Yeah.
because the generations that follow us will now go, oh, there's over 70 possible symptoms that are known today connected to low estrogen.
Yeah.
Wow, right?
I want to ask you about this narrative that you're using, and I use it a lot, about the wise woman, because I know a lot
Mhm.
of people, a lot of women are like, they don't know what that means, and it sounds like platitude, like, don't worry about menopause, because when you get into postmenopause, you're going to be this wise woman, confident, speak truth to power, and say whatever you want. I sort of say, you don't want to meet a postmenopausal woman in a dark alley in the middle of the night, because she's the one to watch out for. But a lot of women are
Right.
like they're not really quite sure what that wise woman really
Yeah.
means. And while they're in the depths of it, they're like, I'd give up being the wise woman if I didn't have to go through all of this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it varies for a lot of women because I do talk to women that feel like they're invisible at this stage in life. And they feel like their voice is no longer being heard and they're not being recognized at work and they're fading. They feel like they're fading. And there's still that mindset attached to the idea that when we can no longer reproduce, that we're irrelevant. That's still out there, right? That our job is done. But if we shift the mindset from now I'm just preparing to die to now I'm preparing to share my knowledge, well, what does that look like? So, how do you stop feeling irrelevant? Well, I can tell you, I've been sought out to sit on boards because I put myself out there as a wise woman. Here's what I know. Here's how I can help you. This is what I can talk about. I can help you with your events. I can do the things. Most women have an ability to do that, to share their knowledge, to help different boards. Whatever your
Yeah.
passion is, this is your opportunity. You now have more time.
Yeah.
You now have the knowledge. You have the skill set, and you have a voice that needs to be heard.
Yeah.
So how can you help and do more in the world? Like what you're doing. I love how you're helping the next generation do better, and the idea of sharing stories with your children so they can know more and go into the world with more information.
Yeah.
Um, that's up to women.
Yeah.
We are the carriers of knowledge, right? We are. Um,
What about those women who are still what we call in that sandwich generation, where they're caring for aging
yeah.
elderly parents, or they have family responsibilities that fall on their shoulders, or we still have kids around, they may not need us in the same way, but now they need us differently. They may have moved
Yeah.
back home, they may be going off to college or whatever, but they still keep coming home for all different things.
Yeah.
And we are fighting for our own, we want to be that woman who is independent and knows what she wants, and is really saying, okay, I've given myself to you, now I'm going to give myself to me. But they're
Yeah.
still caught between all these
Yeah.
demands on them, that it's not just external demands like a job, it's actual real things that
Yeah.
they need to show up for.
No, you're right. And the overwhelm can be absolutely horrible at this stage. I have a girlfriend that her son has a disability and it's progressive, so it's getting worse as he ages.
Yeah.
And her dad was just in the hospital, and then her dad's wife fell while he was in the hospital. So she's now trying to manage their care, her son's
Yeah.
care, still keep a job. It's very overwhelming. Um, and generally the discussion that comes out in that is, okay, how can we make it easier? Where can you find help?
Yeah.
How do you make space for yourself in this? Because what happens if you stay in this overwhelm and you're stressed to the point of disease, because we know stress causes
Yeah.
heart attacks, it causes
Yeah.
cancer. I mean, ultimately, stress, inflammation, these are the things that cause disease. You can't stay there. So, what can you do to start to relieve that overwhelm? Um, and it's always an interesting conversation with women because we feel that we carry all this burden
Yeah.
and can't ask for help,
Yeah.
but we can, and help is out there. And it may not be in your immediate circle, it may not be. You may have to reach out and look for nursing services that can come into the home. You may have to take your parents to adult daycare. That exists, it's real. Um, you may have to look at getting your parents into a home. These are, and in so many communities and especially in the past, it became the woman's job, if you're the only daughter, to take care of the parents.
Yeah.
But realistically, is that even possible?
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
some situations, it's not. And it's not fair, I don't think, especially in some families. I can see, okay, I can tell you in my situation, I didn't have great parents. They were alcoholics.
Yeah.
And when my mom had Alzheimer's, there was no way I was bringing her home. There was no
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Um, and it's okay.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I think we need to the conversation is it's okay.
Yeah.
You don't have to do this. The expectation that you've placed on yourself
Yeah.
doesn't have to be that,
Yeah.
you
I
know?
think it's about making informed, consensual decisions,
Yeah,
educated decisions. Does this work for me? Do I
right,
have the capacity to do this?
right.
And what does it mean for me? And processing that if I don't have the capacity to do this. How do
Yeah,
I show up as a loyal family member if I don't have the capacity to do it the way that it should be done?
right. Should.
And I think, yeah, like making peace with that, having informed, educated, consensual decisions around that, and that it not just be something, as you said, that you have to do, which then totally adds to the stress and I think the conflict. I think that's sort of part of what this transition is about. The
Yes,
conflict of
yeah, absolutely.
who you used to be, who you should be versus who you want to be now.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That
So
is where it's at.
what type of strategies or what type of questions, you asked an excellent question at the beginning, but what type of things are you doing with your clients? How does their journey with you sort of progress?
Yeah, everybody's a little bit different. So it depends on what they're
Yeah.
seeking, and everybody's in a different place in their journey. So it varies. If we're starting with someone who the question that I initially started with, can you describe yourself without any labels? If I get the deer in the headlight and they have no idea, that's
Yeah.
where we have to start. Because, you know, we talk about purpose, and that's kind of a thing that comes to be important as we age, right? And we find a lot that as we come into our 40s, 50s, our jobs vary in how they are important to us because we want to feel like we're contributing to something bigger than ourselves. And
Yeah.
so sometimes, though, we don't know what our purpose is. And does that word, how do I want to say this? Does that word confuse us?
Yes.
Because it can be very confusing if you don't know.
Yeah.
Well, how do you get it out of yourself? And some of
Yeah.
it can be met with curiosity, and it really should be met with curiosity because you need to get to know yourself.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting how others perceive us and how we perceive ourselves sometimes are completely different.
Yeah. Definitely.
So, somewhere in the middle is the truth, right? Now, how do we find that? because that is where the purpose lies. And so there's a lot of, so, that's kind of the journey often with me, again, depending on what
Amazing.
it is. Somebody may just say, uh, I don't love my job anymore. I love animals. I want to do something with animals. I don't want to do something with marketing anymore, but maybe I do. But how can I combine it and how do I turn it into something? Right. And so that if we're just working with that, that's
Yeah.
one thing, right? But if we're working with I have no idea who I am or who I
Yeah.
want to be, it's a whole different journey,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Of course. It depends where their starting point is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I guess, can you give us examples of what happens? I don't know if you sort of in the post menopause, in the post journey of this sort of, experience and the realization. What are you seeing that women can do? What is possible for them afterwards? Not just sort of to leave it as this sort of very amorphic type of thing, but what have you seen happen where women really do step into their wisdom, their purpose, their confidence, their understanding of
Yeah.
that they are now connecting to, and I think there is an element of becoming someone a little bit different. That doesn't mean you've
Yeah.
got to,
Yeah.
doesn't mean you have to necessarily get divorced, you have to move different to a different state, or you have to do something dramatic or drastic, but something does intrinsically change in you.
It does. We change whether we want to or not once we connect with who we are because we make space for ourselves instead of just making space for everyone else.
Yeah.
I think there's so many things, right? But boundaries become and I know this is kind of a catchword
Yeah.
now, but um, understanding boundaries and applying them to your life so you're not constantly at everyone else's beck and call is a huge thing that starts to arise once we hit postmenopause. Um, what's important to you? How do you how do you simplify? I guess would be a good way to put it. And I
Yeah.
think that becomes
Yeah.
important for a lot of women as we get older. It becomes more of a how do I find joy in my life? How do I have more joy? How do I make my life more simple? How do I stop fighting with myself, right? To try to be everything to everyone because you never succeed at that. You can't be everything to everyone. Um, so once we start getting through some of this and trying to learn how to set boundaries and learn how to change our mindset, that it's okay to want to do things for yourself. It's okay to have your own life, your own loves, your own desires. Um, and then how do you let them play out? Um, sometimes people don't like it when you set boundaries because they don't have the access to you that they used to.
Yeah.
But we have to learn to be okay with that because in the end, we love others. And to pull in Mel Robbins, we have to let them, right,
Yeah.
be them.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we have to be us and choose us too. So finding that balance, I think, is a big piece of that. And
I
then yeah, I was going to say, trying to go back to the answer your questions a little bit more, but finding the purpose and then how do we put it and bring it into our life? A lot of times it can be a job, it can be volunteering, it can be just adjusting how we live our life. Sometimes it's simple, sometimes it's not.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you touched on something just before that is super interesting. And that is, sorry, I'm just looking at my dog who seems to have stolen something. um, and that is, it's not only about our relationship with ourselves, it's about our relationship with people around us because we've
Mhm.
been living with certain expectations, certain modes of conduct, making ourselves available, certain boundaries that were or were not usually in place. Um,
Yeah.
and it's not only us that are going through a journey, it's sharing that journey with the people around us, having a language to be able to say to, for example, our kids or our partner, I'm not going to be cooking dinner every night anymore. Like I may
Yeah.
used to have made, fresh home cooked dinners. I'm just not doing that anymore. And that doesn't mean I don't love you. And it doesn't mean I'm running off, with the circus. And it doesn't mean that I'm, leaving you all behind. It just means it's just not happening anymore in that same way. Because I think
Yeah.
that when women go through their journey, That's super important. But if they don't have the language to be able to share it to the people that it's going to impact, that's where tension arises, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And I love what you're saying there about not cooking meals all of the time. And that's somewhat of an easy conversation to have, but you have to have it. Instead of just, the husband coming home and there's no longer a meal when he gets home, have the conversation and say, I don't really love to cook. I've been doing it all this time because we were raising children and it was a necessity. The kids are gone. It's just you and me. We have a choice here. You can step up and help cook. We can
Yeah.
eat out more. We can order in. There's options. And that's it. That's the conversation. But you're right. You need to be able to have the conversations. And again, women are not great at that because a lot of us hate conflict, right? But
Conflict. Yeah.
so again, it's kind of stepping into your truth.
Yeah. I think we
Step into
hate
your
conflict, but I also think we haven't been given the language. And I especially know this in the menopause
truth.
space. We
Yeah.
haven't been given the language, and we're sort of talking very similar things, but using slightly different words.
Yeah.
In that, when women are going through perimenopause and menopause and their bodies are changing and they're experiencing, different emotional experiences, physical experiences, we are surprised. I mean, now it's a little bit different the last few years, but in general, women don't know what to expect from their perimenopause, menopause
Oh
journey.
yeah. No
And they
idea.
don't know how to share that with their loved ones because they're taken by surprise and we've never been taught the language, to be able to turn to your partner and say, I am feeling this because I am in perimenopause. It's not you, it's me. Let's work together to try figuring it out. This is what I'm going through. That's a much more profound experience than you just like shouting or yelling or saying like, I don't have the patience and leave me alone and I just need quiet and I don't want to see anyone, which is often what
Yeah.
women say.
Right. No,
Why?
true.
Why are you saying that? What's going on? And I think that's what's missing a lot. So do
I
you
think
talk
so.
about
And
that with your clients also, about sort of having those conversations?
we definitely talk about communication, connecting it to menopause, maybe not, because it's one of those things that how do you even know
Yeah.
if it's perimenopause or it's menopause that's causing this? You have a different feeling, you're frustrated,
Yeah.
you're feeling a little depressed, you want more than what you have. I mean, these things, but where is it coming from? And is it just age or is it menopause? Is it a drop in estrogen? What is it? And um, I think having these conversations like we're having now will help with that. We can say, unfortunately, most doctors, you go in and they're like, here, take an antidepressant or
Yep.
just wait, you'll
Yep.
get through it. It'll be better on the other side. Hi, it's
Yep.
not better on the other side. It's worse in some ways.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But, but we have choices. And so I think we really have to be our own advocates. That's hard for a lot of us because
Yeah.
we just say, oh, well, whatever our doctor says is the truth.
Yeah.
Well,
Yep.
there's a lot more than that because if your doctor doesn't have the experience in menopause, which most of them don't, I think they have
Yeah.
like 10 minutes in their whole programming about menopause
Yep.
and like one class on nutrition, right? So these things that are important for our well-being aren't even being taught.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what do? You have to do your own research. You have, like I said, your own advocate and go
Yeah.
find the information. Dr. Google helps, but we can't rely on that completely. At that point, we have to start looking for specialists and say, okay, this is what's going on with me.
Yeah.
What's happening? What's happening in my body? What's happening in my brain? What's causing this? What are my options? How do I be better? And so much of it, we can talk about HRT a little bit. I'm not a physician, so I can't really talk on it. I just know from my experience, it helps. From my own perspective, it helps with the pains.
Yeah.
I just started it not long ago, but the aches and pains are much better. Where will it go from here? I'm hoping it'll help with the brain fog. It came on as part of menopause, and that's one of the many
Yeah.
symptoms. But again, it's a process because I've seen several doctors now that I'm like, okay, now I know I have to go find the specialist I
Yeah.
need, but it's hard because one doctor will treat this, another doctor will
Yeah.
treat this, and how do you
Yeah.
find the person that puts the whole body, the whole person together,
Together.
right? Because
So that is definitely a challenge of our conventional Western medical healthcare system.
yeah,
The specialization and the specialists that developed through, the last X number of years as the training and the understanding of the body and the understanding of how different systems work. And then you've got the specialists who specialize in each of the different systems of the body. On the one hand, it's amazing. But on the other hand, we then lost that holistic approach to the fact that you can't just take the gastric area and the cardiac area, the heart and the gut and the thyroid and the digestive system and all these different things and just take them as individual organs, because the body doesn't work like that. But our healthcare system has grown into that specialization narrative
yeah,
that one doctor, you go to see one doctor for X, another doctor for Y, another doctor for Z, and you're like, as you said, like, is there someone that can put it all together? And that's, I think, the growth of functional medicine. I think functional medicine has
yeah,
really, really come to answer that. I think really good menopause specialists, and there are menopause specialists, but really good ones who also
yes,
understand that menopause is a whole body experience, not just a reproductive experience.
right.
So yeah, things are changing, but the onus is on the woman, as you said, to do her research, to find the right practitioner who can help her, to find someone who really knows what they're talking about. And we're talking about women who are very often really struggling at this stage of life with, a litany of different symptoms, with being that sandwich generation, with their own identity, with their own, like, I don't want to be doing this anymore. So it's a lot. It's a lot of
It's a lot.
balls in the air to be juggling.
Yep.
And then
It's a
you're
lot.
saying, but you've got to put yourself first and you've got to have the boundaries. And it's,
Right.
yeah. But I
It's a lot.
agree with you. We just need to peel the layers. We need to slowly, slowly peel back the layers and remove that overwhelm from it.
And that's it. One little thing at a time. And how do we do that? And everybody's different. We all are coming from a different place. We have different needs. We have different concerns. It would be nice if we said menopause was the same for everyone, and then it would be easy to treat, but it's not.
Yeah.
We all show up with different symptoms, right? And so it's harder for some and easier for others. And it's just I guess the big message is that it's okay. You're going through something and it's okay. We're all going through it. When we get to this age, we're going through it. It looks different. You're not going crazy. Your body is changing. Your mind is changing. It's all part of the process. And I think, don't give up on yourself. And that's a big thing. And just don't give up on yourself. It's going to be okay. You just have to keep working at it.
You're working with women who are already here at this stage, who are having all these profound questions, who are struggling and dealing and trying to figure it all out. Is there a way to bypass this by having these conversations much earlier on? Is there any value of speaking to women in their 30s, for example, to give them the tools, the knowledge, the skills so that they can prepare for this when it happens? Or is that sort of like a non-relevant conversation, because really you only realize the depths and the profound nature of what you're going through when you're actually going through it? Or sort of, is there a way to preempt and prepare for it?
So I think there is. I haven't really addressed it so much yet, but as you asked the question and I'm pondering this, and I've had friends that with some of my work that are like, we need to talk to my daughter about this too, but understanding who we are and understanding our purpose and what we want out of life, we can start to ask those questions and start to address them younger, so that we're not all of a sudden going, how did I get here?
Yeah.
Because if you're talking about it and you're considering it, you'll know. So it won't be such a smack in the face. And then also, I think with the menopause conversation, having it earlier, now that we're talking about it freely, and it's not this hush hush, you can't talk about it kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Um, when weird stuff starts happening in their bodies, they'll probably be able to go, okay, my periods are all jacked up. I must be in perimenopause. I see what's happening. Or I'm starting to feel a little crazy. What's going on? Why is my body starting to ache? Right? Because most women would be like, "Oh, that's just part of aging," or even men
Yeah.
too. It's just part of aging.
Yeah.
It is,
Yeah.
but there are things you can do about it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I think
yeah, and
part of the
so
problem is part of the challenge, not the problem, but part of the challenge is that women in their 20s and 30s are very distracted with other things.
they are.
Um, Either you're, having kids and or you're developing your career and or you're, getting married, starting a new life, choosing your life partner, making big life decisions. And you're very, very distracted. And these conversations, but I think they need to happen 100%. And I think that at least to be asking the question. So as you said, it doesn't come, like a brick in the face when it happens. But, I see younger cousins of mine who are in their 30s. And this was how I was also, as I said, I'm a mum of 5 kids. In your
Mhm.
30s, it's just literally hanging on by your fingernails to get through every
Yeah,
day.
yeah,
And you don't have the capacity to think about what's my purpose in life. My purpose in life is to wake up in the morning,
no,
get my kids off to playgroup, kindergarten, school, high school, get them ready for the exams, cook dinner, go to work, come home. That's all you're worried about is just getting through the 24
right.
hours.
There's not room for the rest of it.
Yeah.
But you might hear, like if the conversations are going on around you, you might pick up snippets and pieces and parts that you're not smacked in the face when it happens, which we are now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. This has been strong and powerful, and I think really important. As you said, like this is part of the larger midlife menopause conversation. Women need to know that this is going to happen, whether they like it or not. I think a lot of women do try to hold on to a certain identity, and then it either is going to hit them in the face, or very often women are like, I'm ready for it. Bring it on. I'm ready for it. And again, it depends sort of where you fall on that spectrum. But is there anything that we haven't touched upon that you really want to share? Something that, you know, is really important that you've seen with your clients or that you really want women to know that we haven't yet sort of spoken about?
Hmm. There's so many ideas and philosophies on different things. And, I think some of the big ones are don't let fear rule you. And it's
Yeah.
hard. Sometimes you have to face the fear. We know the fear is there. It may not go away, but you still have to be able to act through it. Um,
Yeah.
that's a big one. One of the other ones that drives me crazy these days is about how the media portrays aging and
Yes.
how we're supposed to fight it. What? To me, every time now that I see a commercial for Botox or dyeing your hair or losing weight or whatever it may be, I'm kind of like, why are we not allowed to age naturally? Why
Yeah.
can't we just be who we are?
Yeah. Yeah. That
That
whole
drives me
that
nuts.
whole concept has been totally co-opted by the media, by movies, by TV, by magazines. It's not even a real conversation. We've got to peel back the layers so far to
Yeah.
have real conversations about aging and you know the visibility of aging women.
Yeah. Yeah. Just let us be natural. Why can't we just be natural? It drives me nuts. That's my big pet peeve these days. But
Yeah,
I think, as women are going through this, you get to choose. You can choose to not dye your hair. You can choose to let your wrinkles, that in my opinion, I have earned them. That's the way I
yeah,
look at it.
yeah,
Um, you know, it's all, so much of it is a mindset and
Yeah.
what you want to believe and who you are trying to be and who you're trying to be that for. I guess that's
Yeah.
another thing that comes up often too, especially with the idea of not being allowed to age naturally. Who are we trying to be younger for? Who are we trying to be prettier for? Who are we trying to be for?
Yeah.
Because men don't care. We're not doing it for men,
Yeah.
and we're not doing it for ourselves. So we're playing this game of who's got the bigger Gucci purse with
Yeah.
our youth, right? So again, it's trying to do this for other women. So how, that's the other part of the story.
Yeah.
How do
Yeah.
women become more caregiving for other women?
Yeah.
How do we honor ourselves and other women instead of being competitive, instead of trying to be better than, instead of putting each other down?
Yeah.
How do we give love and kindness to each other and bring each other up instead
Yeah.
of put each other down?
Yeah. I think that's definitely a language that has been built in maybe from a sort of more patriarchal, more capitalist society that we're all
Yep.
in competition with each other. But the much
Yeah.
more feminine language is we can all be in it to support each other. And what
Yes.
happens when we're all in it to support each other rather than all in
Right.
it to bash the other
Yeah.
one down. And I think
Yeah.
that that is something the feminine narrative really brings to the table. And
Yeah.
we need to embrace that as women, not see that as a weakness, not just assume that the capitalist patriarchal language is the one that we need to adopt, but allow ourselves to really feed into the that very feminine energy and what that means. And that also, that's, again, peeling back the layers. Why is the assumption that it has to be X? Why, can't we? And I think that's
Yep.
also what post-menopause does for us. And Jane Fonda, the actress, talks about this a lot
Yep.
now, about her female friendships, how important her female friendships are,
Yeah.
way more
Yeah.
important than any male or romantic friendships.
Absolutely. And all the happiness studies out there say that these our connections with others, especially with having our friendships, is the most important thing we can have, especially as we age. There's been a lot of research on people on their deathbed and their dying conversations are, I wish I would have made more room for my friends. Okay. It's there. So make room for your friends, build those relationships.
Yeah.
You know, it's important. It's at every level, it's important. You want a happier, healthier life, make room for your friends.
Yeah. So I'm just going to finish on this point because I think it's so important, because it really is the physical, emotion, the sort of biological and emotional, physical, mental. It like this all comes into each other, and the hormonal, biological. Of we
Yep.
know that when women are together with women, in circles, just meeting up for a friend for coffee, going with a
Yeah.
friend on a walk, it boosts your oxytocin levels. There is an actual biological hormonal response to female connection. We know it boosts oxytocin levels, and that is, the feel good hormone. It does a lot of important things in the brain. And it's not just about, that there's, it's good to do. It's actually really important to our physical, emotional health.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And then there's proof. There's lots of proof and studies on that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yes, make room for your friends. Absolutely.
Yes.
And go make new friends. Find ways to find, if you don't have any friends right now, find ways to go make friends. And
Yeah.
there's lots of ways to do that. So,
Yeah.
but that's a whole other podcast. So,
So as we end this conversation, which is just really, really important, it's just, these are basic conversations that are just not being had. There's no rocket science going on here. There's no, brand new original ideas. It's just things that we need to be sharing and talking about. So I'm so
yeah.
happy that you are talking about this in such a real, honest, very easy, simple way. It doesn't have to be complicated, but the
No.
message is really, really profound. This podcast is called Things I Want My Daughters to Know. And I always ask my guests, what do you want your daughters, either, your real daughters, your figurative daughters, your goddaughters, your nieces, that next generation of women, what is the one message that you want them to have?
The biggest message, I think, honestly, is, and I think I said it, was that you are worthy. You are worthy of the life you desire. So many women don't feel that. And, so many times I'll say that to someone who's feeling out of place and the tears just start to fall because they don't feel that. But your life is yours. I don't care where you came from. I don't care who your parents are. This is your life. And you get to decide what's best for you. And you are worthy of what you love. And so, whatever that is, build your life for that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wish our teens, knew that. I think teens have a really, because of obviously been exacerbated by social media, but social pressure and all the stuff that goes on when you're a teen, a female teen.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're not being told this. They don't feel this. There's so much blockage to really internalizing this, what should be a really simple message.
Yeah. But I think for whatever reason, we're not taught it. We're not, I guess I don't know. I don't know what happens. I start to try to think back on this and how that we feel that we're not. And I don't know if it's so much of, some of it's probably patriarchal stuff. Some of it's the heavy expectations that are put on us. Some of it's just even the noise in the media, and like you're saying, social media, and I'm too fat. I'm not pretty enough. My lips aren't full enough. My lashes are too short. I'm not smart enough. So we hear this constantly, right?
Yeah.
How do you block it? Because none of that has to do with worth. None of that has to do with worth.
Yeah.
Everybody is worthy. Everybody.
Yeah.
That's what you do with it then. So if you know that you're worthy of the life you desire, go do what you want with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Remi, this has been really profound, really meaningful. Tell my listeners where they can find you. Where are you hanging out? If they want to, connect with you, where can they find you?
Yeah. And the easiest thing is renovatedrealities.com. That's my website. And you can find my links to Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook there. So that's where you'll find me.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And there will be links in the show notes to all of that, so people will be able to follow you and find you. Amazing. Thank you. This has been really lovely, really profound. I know this is going to hit for so many women because, as I've said it so many times, we are not talking about this and we need to talk about it more. So thank you for sharing this with everyone. I really am happy that you joined us today. Thank you, everyone, for listening to this episode of the Things I Want My Daughters to Know podcast. Check Remi out. She, as you can hear, is a wise woman and knows what she's talking about. So please check her out and join me for another episode at the Things I Want My Daughters to Know podcast. We'll be here again next week. Have a great day.